Page 68, the Skaters Waltz, another very famous melody. I hear a lot around Christmas time, I reckon. So I'm going to go through my process. Let's see what we got. I look it over, I see it's 4 pages long. Treble and bass clef, no sharps in the key signatures, so it's either in C major or A minor. Well, if I look at the last measure, how does it end? Because a lot of times a piece will end on its one chord. Not always, but most of the time I think they do. And we see it's here. Well, that's a C major chord. I figure we're in C major. However, I'm still going to do the scales and arpeggios for the key signature, which means C major and A minor both. And it's a 3/4 time, which makes sense because it's a waltz. So let's go over the fingering and notes and all for the hands. The right hand, you're starting here, and it's not too bad here because it's just 1, 2, 3. And you're staying in this position until measure 8 when you got to come up here. 1 and 2 and 3. Reach down. You want to connect this. And then it's measure 13, it's a 3. But we're going to go 1, 3. You change on the repeated note. And then the 8th note's measure 16. You're up here. 1 and 2 and 3 and here. And I'm just rocking. Ba 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 ba. And I'm just lowering which fingers I want the weight to go on when I ba-ba. That's all. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. And the measure 21 is the same idea, but that's the little finger. That's all that is. Measure 29, we have the trills. That's good exercise. You need to be able to, again, I'm just rocking the hand back and forth, and I'm just lowering which finger it's on. I'm not holding the hand still and trying to use the fingers. I really don't recommend it. That was the way it was done a couple of 100 years ago, but they were different instruments. I mean, back then, the amount of effort to push a key down on instruments back then is about half of what it is today. It's much harder to push these keys down today than it was then. And back then, they could get away with that. Can't do that now. You gotta use weight to help you out. It's here. Should do it in both hands. Just rocking is all I'm doing. I mean, you could change here, but I would encourage you to stay here because this is good exercise for these fingers. You can use 5 if you want, 3 and 5, because we do that too. Now, when you get over to measure 33 on page 70, it's the same notes we had before, except it has the 8VA. It says right hand only. You don't need the right hand only. It's right hand anyway. You see with an 8VA, it only applies to the staff it's next to. Don't get confused on this. If they want both staffs, they have to put in a note both hands, or they got to put the 8VA on both staffs. So you don't need the right hand only. They're just helping you out. But you come up here. Doing it all up here. Measure 45, you get the run coming down. Well, if you've been doing the C major scale and you're finally doing it in 2 octaves, this should be pretty easy. You don't have to go that fast. That's all that is. Left hand, well, left hand's just broken chord. We get chuck chucks, chuck chuck. You can, like a measure 4, when it's here, if you don't want to do that, you can play both of those notes with the thumb. Here. However you want to do it. Put the hands together. Here, it's here, and then here, and then here, and here. Both hands, but you're moving them one hand at a time. So we're going to measure 8. You're here, here, come up, and as you're doing this, right hand or left hand up. Now get the left hand out of the way because the right hand needs that note on measure 10. Here, chuck, get off. You get the idea. That's basically the piece throughout. So you put the hands together and then go back through the trouble spots and get rid of the hesitations. Keep it as slow as you need to go, doesn't matter, but no hesitations. a steady beat throughout. 1, 2, 3 at some speed. And once I have that, then I think about the articulation. Most of this is pretty connected here. Lift up. You have to lift up for the rest. And you're going to connect this. There's different ways of interpreting this. I can take the phrase to be from the pickup to measure 9, the eighth notes, all the way to measure 12 to the half note, and then lift up. It's like a pickup beat. Or I could take the whole thing as one long phrase here. Just connect it all as one long phrase is fine. And then on the eighth notes, you're connecting those. You get chuck chucks in the right hand. Measure 29, connect these. So they do give you slur with the last measure there on the page. Pretend the whole line is slurred together. Connect it all. Even the left hand. You can't connect them, but try to connect them. Then the dynamics, well, that applies to the melody. Here is the right hand. Moderately loud, mezzo forte. Whatever you think sort of loud, the left hand needs to be soft. And we get to pick up to measure 17, the end of measure 16. Moderately softer means you come down a little bit because you've been moderately loud. Now you're moderately soft. The left hand's got to be soft. Very gentle. Measure 29, you're soft. A little louder. Louder, back to moderately soft. And you go back down. Save most of your going down for the last measure there. Because then you're going to go up here. You can follow the dynamics, just do whatever it says, just keep the left hand in the background. As far as the speed goes, think of people waltzing to this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The tendency will want to speed this part up, but be careful because of measure 17, that part. How fast can you do that accurately? And don't go any faster than that. The whole thing needs to be at one speed. Thing is at one speed. You have some retardandos in there in a few places. Like a pick up to measure 17, poco rit. Just slow down a little bit. You're just hesitating just a little bit, and then take off. A tempo means go back to the speed you were going before you slow down. And at the bottom of the page, on page 69, you get rit. This is a retardano, not a polka retardano, a retardano. And then you're going to get the a tempo then up measure 17 where you go back to what you were doing. So you're slowing down in a few places, and that's nice. Now they've added pedal. And yeah, this is really for orchestra. So yes, we'd like to have the pedal. And there's some different kind of waltz pedaling techniques I'd like to show you. Or you can just pedal like they're showing if you want. Don't pedal some of these measures. Well, let's talk about them. I'm going to push the notes down first and then the pedal, and it's overlapping pedals, so it's legato. So it's after I play the notes. Now, measure 8. I'm lifting it up with the left hand here, and I'm not pedaling the eighth notes. I want those clean. So it's start with measure, 6, 7. Here. I even have a little bit of silence there. And they have you pedaling measure 16. I don't care for that at all. I don't see any reason to pedal measure 16. And then here. This this has to be very clean, very light, delicate, and clean. So if you pedaled it, it's smeared up. It changes the atmosphere of the whole thing. Yeah. So you don't pedal again until measure 29 on the trills. And the last measure of the page on page 69. I'm not crazy about that. So you could always change the pedal with each note to keep that clean, but we still get the overtones, so you change it with each note. It's okay. And then the other pages, I don't talk about them much because they're sort of a repeat of what we've already had. Now the problem we have here on page 70 at measure 41 is they want you to pedal this. You're getting a little louder and more excited. And because these higher notes, they don't last as long. They die away fairly quickly, so you can usually get away in this case of pedaling those and it's not quite so bad. But when I start coming down in here, it makes a difference. You see, if I play these notes on measure 41, but I play them down here, and I pedal them, it just smears it off. But up here, the smearing isn't quite so bad. It's a different effect. So it depends on where you are on the keyboard as what you're pedaling too. If you want to pedal those up there, you notice the left hand is just doing half notes, so it's a different feeling here. Something to that effect. And then the last page is pedaled the same way you've been doing it, like on measure 56. Lift it up, don't pedal. Don't pedal the eighth notes. At the bottom, the last two measures there. At the bottom of page 71 here. They have you pedaling those. If you want to hear the staccatos, don't pedal them. And then, by the way, I use a 2-5 on that last measure because I'm here, I just reach up. If you want. You have to listen very carefully to the pedal and the effect it has on the music and what you're going to do with it. Now I'd like to show you a couple waltz style pedaling effects that you can try out on pieces that are 3/4 time or whatever, have a waltz feel. And that is, sometimes you can get away with just pedaling the first beat of the measure. That reinforces the natural accents. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's like a measure 17 on these. If I just pedal the first beat, it just reinforces that. So that's one use sometimes. Another way of doing it is to reinforce the chuck chucks. Like at the beginning, chuck chuck. In that case, I pedal the first two beats and lift up on the third beat. So at the beginning, if I do that, it's another type of pedaling thing you can think about, a technique, and try out in some of your pieces with 3/4 time. You experiment, you explore. What difference does it make to the sound if I change the pedal? Be aware of your pedaling and the effect it has on what you're doing. tend to want to hold that last beat out just a little longer, that last note. Like I had a fermata or something. There's no fermata on it, so you can hold it out for 3 counts if you want. Just keep in mind that you slow down there, so your 3 counts are going to last a little longer. Now we have a page turn to deal with here. So how are you going to do that? If you're reading this and you're playing it for people, you got to be able to turn the page without messing up the beat. Please don't mess up the beat because you're turning pages. It has to be a steady flow of music all the way through. So we go through our choices of how can we turn the page. Well, first off, the first choice is always memorize the piece, or at least memorize 2 of the pages, so you don't even have to bother with it. Otherwise, maybe you get somebody to turn the page for you. Otherwise, you got to do it yourself. Well, then we got to figure out where we're going to turn the page. Is there some measure nearby, or 2, where one hand or the other isn't doing anything? And in this piece, no, both hands are always busy. Okay, that means we got to leave out notes. That's the last choice. You don't want to leave out notes, but if you have to, you have to, because the beat is more important than the notes. So we leave out notes. The question is which notes? Well, you can't leave out melody notes. No, naughty. You got to leave out something else. That means here, the left hand. We got to leave out the left hand. So what I can do is the last couple measures at the bottom of page 69 here. Here, I'll leave out the left hand here. I can play the first one here, and then as I'm doing this, I'm turning the page with the left hand, and I miss this chord. That's sort of my suggestion here. So it's the best we can do. Just be aware of what the next measure is on the next page. You don't want to turn the page and then suddenly have to figure out where to go, because we got to come up here. So just know that as I'm turning the page, I got to get my right hand up here and be ready to go on. So we practice page turns when we need to. I do it a lot, especially if you're accompanying somebody, because you got to stay with them. So just make it a smooth beat throughout. I'll leave it up to you on how you're going to get the page turned.